Welcome to the Perceptions Today podcast, where we discuss consciousness in all forms. February 2022, episode 13, Myron Dyal joins us for Guided by Intuition Roundtable Part 2 of 4. Myron is a mystic, artist, musician, and has visions connected to TLE.
And here comes Baba out of a blue light. And he stayed with me for about 6 months and taught me what he needed to say. We talked. For 6 months he came. And then one day he said, "My time with you is now over and I must go."
This is an instance of the conversation coming up in the roundtable discussion. Participants knew it was being recorded.
All over the galaxy, all over the universe. And I know there's a lot of discussion about all that stuff, and I don't even want to go into that. But the fact of it is, that's what I think. And so I think that you, when those animals get to you, they know who you are. And I think that when you meet somebody like, say, Cosmic Librarian or Shadow Fox or, Christopher Mile or somebody, you kind of know that they're like you are. In fact, I can give you a really good example. The first time that I was diagnosed with epilepsy, believe it or not, was when I was 50. 50. Before that, I had all kinds of experiences, but nobody would tell me that it was epilepsy. Anyway, so I joined an epilepsy foundation group, a support group. So I go to the group, and I'm in a suit and tie, and they're all unemployed and living at home, and some of them are 50 or 60, and they've never worked because their epilepsy's been so bad. And I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I with these people? I haven't got anything in common with these people. So then they started to talk, and they started to relate their experiences. And I went, oops, wait a minute. They know things that nobody knows about me. How can they know that these things are the same things that I know? And then I just flipped over and went, these are my brothers and sisters. These are my compadres. They know things about me that no one can possibly know. Not doctors, not parents, no one. And so I stayed in the group for like 15 years and helped run it, all that, joined the Epilepsy Foundation and stuff. But the point of it is that when we share a common destiny, that is a real thing. That's not just words. Because it's a common experience that you are sharing, and it's not available to just anyone. That's the many I call few are chosen scripture, I think, because most people reject it. Even if they experience it, they just think, I was drunk, or it's drugs or whatever. We are all one thing, one cosmic consciousness, and all we do is fight it. And fight it and fight it and fight it with our egos, and like Jung says, you spend most of your life building an ego, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to get rid of it, because you're going to go on to another dimension, and the ego's got to go. I'm sorry, it just has to go. And you have to be absorbed back into the infinite, and you're not going to be there. You, being Myron Dyal, is not going to be there anymore. Now, I didn't want to get into that, but I slipped into it, so I'll let that go at that. But as far as your dog stuff is concerned, I think that is an excellent example of how energy is transferred from one being to another. And I can't think of a better example. So
that was a perfect example or explanation. Made complete sense to me with the animals. I always thought they saw me in a different way, which is interesting. And then your point with the ego as well. That's me on the, right on the head right there. I just refused to let it go for so many years. And it was almost like the universe forced me out of it with several things. The things that happened to me are all quite consecutive in the last several years, and they were compounded. And it was like a tree. You were just stubborn with hard bark. And something just had to chop me away to knock down that ego. And once it happened, though, that was it. It was like, my wife thought I was crazy for a bit because I was open to ideas all of a sudden that just I was so adamantly against. So it's been a fun new world for me meeting everyone now in the last couple of years, and it's been interesting. But thank you for your talk, Myron.
Welcome home, pal.
Which is great. I mean, we have so many great conversations about consciousness and how it goes, but we can go further a bit later. I'd like to introduce you to Krista, another one of the community who is also going to be giving a talk on February the 8th about lucid dreaming. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Krista.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I have a bunch of notes, but I won't ask you all the questions.
Okay. Ask away.
Well, I'm curious. So I just, someone put it in the chat of your artwork, and you have a little bit in your bio in there. But do you have any memories at all prior to the coma? Like, do you have anything that you remember before it happened? I know you were only 4, and it's hard to remember before you're 4 anyway. But I'm just curious if you have any memory at all before the coma. So that's one question. The second one is your watercolors are distinct outside of all the other work. And so I was curious of why you choose different mediums. Are you called to do that? And I'm just curious if the watercolor series is different than the others. And yeah, it's really great just to kind of hear your insight. Someone was, I think it was Eileen or Wild Eyes was talking about, to be of a certain age and to have survived this long. I'm 41, so I'm like your children's age if you have kids. So when I think of my parents, I would never have these kind of conversations with my parents about this sort of thing. And I do commend you for kind of staying on this track and being curious and not, folding into kind of the norms of people that are your age. I think anybody that participates in these kind of conversations, we're playing a key role. But I do commend you because I can't imagine, my parents are very religious, but they're not necessarily spiritually curious about anything beyond the dogma of their religion. So right. I just think like right on for doing that. And I want to say this, and I don't want to be, using certain words, I don't want to be offensive, but the way you describe the Charon, it sounds like a possession, like for me, I'm coming from a very dogmatic Christian upbringing. And so when you hear about demonic possession, like some of the things that you say, it sounds like a possession. So how do you differentiate Charon as an entity or as a spirit or as an energy that's in you? Is it a part of you? Is it woven in you? Did it come to you through the coma? Is your intuition you listening to Charon, or is Charon reminding you of what you already know? That's kind of what I'm curious about. If you think that it's a separate thing, or if it's a part of you that is there to just to remind you of things that you have lost from, like you mentioned, when we were on the savannah, we had lots more intuition because we needed it. We needed to have our radar tuned into all the things that were going on. So I don't want to be offensive to say, I think you're possessed, but when you hear about possession, how it's different from what you are experiencing. So yeah, that's it. It's nice to meet you. Thanks so much for this. And I'll.
Well, as far as Charon is concerned, you could say that the Jungians would say that Charon is an undifferentiated part of myself, that Charon is the stronger self that helps the weaker self inside of me, that was abused, beat up, blown up in the military, all kinds of stuff, and went through a coma and all the rest of that stuff. So if you wanted to look at it from a scientific point of view or a psychological point of view, you could say that Charon is an undifferentiated part of me, the stronger me that I need to survive in this world. Outside of this world, Charon and I will be gone, so it really doesn't make any difference. But in the world, in the karma of the world, I need this other part of me to make a whole thing, to make the egg complete. Because without that, I couldn't survive. I just couldn't. My parents, of course, thought it was a demon and put me through 2 demon possession rituals. So the idea that it's a demon is nothing new. I went through those rituals, and then I learned very quickly at a very early age, like 5, 6, and 7, to just shut up and not mention Charon. Remember, Charon's a name that came way later. This is just my friend when I was young. I never mentioned my friend to my parents after the beatings, after the abuse, and after the exorcism. I just pretended like, well, you exorcised that thing and it's gone. First of all, I don't think that demons exist. And then go out on a limb here, and I think it's part of karma. I think angels and demons and all the rest are all part of karma. They're not part of cosmic consciousness. And you have to move through those entities that are psychological and psychic and spiritual in their own way. You have to move through those and just keep moving through them and bypassing them. For instance, I think you can tell any entity by its behavior. If its behavior is 100% positive, that's all it is positive. It is never negative. It can't be a demon, as you would think of a demon, because a demon would have an agenda, and the agenda would be your destruction or your loss of soul and all that, if there was such a thing as a demon. Okay. So Charon never is negative. Never. Okay. And I wrestled with, when I was a Christian, I wrestled with this same question about, all right, this being came to me after I came out of the coma. Your question about what was I like before the coma? I was a happy little boy. Everybody says that. I was happy. I was up. I was already playing the piano. I was just having a great life. And then, wham, I got hit with this coma and was gone. And when I came out of the coma, I was 180 degrees out from that. I was dark and confused, and I lost my memory. I had to rebuild my memory. The only thing, like I said, the only thing that penetrated my memory was the music. That was it. Everything else was gone. I didn't know my parents. I didn't know my brother. I didn't recognize where I lived. I had to rebuild my whole psyche, my whole memory psyche, because that's where the damage is in my brain. And when you have to rebuild the entire world and a being comes to you that's benign, that's loving, that only wants the best for you, then you're going to go with it, seeing how your parents are beating the living hell out of you. And I must tell you, I don't think there's a hell, and I don't think there's a heaven. I don't think those things exist. I'm sorry, I just don't. And I come from a Christian background. I went to seminary and all the rest of it. I'm telling you, I think that everything is cosmic consciousness. And if you're part of cosmic consciousness, that's where you're going to go. I mean, that's where you're going to. Hitler is not in hell. Hitler was in hell when he was alive. There is no hell. There's no eternal punishment that I can ascertain. And all of the journeys that I've gone, I even met a demon one time. I'll tell you this one little anecdote, which I wasn't going to do, but I'll do it anyway. Since everybody told me I was demon possessed, my ministers, pastors, my folks, everybody said, oh, you must be demon. They didn't mean Charon, they meant my behavior, because my behavior had changed 180 degrees. So one day, and of course I grew up thinking, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I am demon possessed. Maybe I am evil. Maybe I have these evil tendencies. Maybe there is a demon in me. So I was sitting on the mountain one day, and I'll make this very, very short. I have this in my book, so if you want to read it, you can read it. I was sitting on the mountain one day, and Charon came to me and said, you have to go on this journey. Go now. Now, Charon did not come with me. So I went on this journey. So I get out, and I'm on this river, like the river Styx. And I'm going down this river, and there's a boatman. And that's Charon, of course, but this boatman wasn't Charon. And in the walls, going down this river, there were screaming beings that were trapped in this wall. So I was hallucinating all of these horrible, tortured people screaming and yelling. And then all these harpies were coming down that just wanted to tear me to pieces. They really wanted to tear me to pieces. And so we landed, I'll make it shorter. We landed and the boatman just pointed to this door. So I got out of the boat, I went to the door, I opened this giant door that must be 60 feet tall, and I walk into a stadium, and the stadium is filled with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. Okay, so what am I doing in this stadium? I had no idea. So all of a sudden, here comes this being, this huge, beautiful, most gorgeous thing I had ever seen. This man, he was like 16 feet tall, and he was just stunning. In his presence, you couldn't do anything but just look in awe at this creature. So he came up to me. I call it he. It wasn't really sexual. So it came up to me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, your guardian, your boatman brought me here. And so I'm here, because you called." And he said, "I didn't call you here, and this is not a place for you. You do not belong here." Now, this was a demon talking. This guy was as big a demon as you can get. And he said to me, "You do not belong here. This is not a place for you. You are not one of us." I'm going to get real emotional. He said, "You're not one of us. You're not demon possessed. We don't own you. Your soul is free. You don't belong here." And he walked me to the boat. He walked me to the boat. This beautiful giant demon creature, whatever you want to call him, he walked me to the boat and he said, "I want you to get in the boat. I want you to go up the river and never come back, ever." And with that, he touched me on the shoulder. Excuse me. He touched me on the shoulder, and I went up the river. And when I came out of the cave, Charon was standing there. The vision faded. Charon was standing there, and she said, "Do you understand now?" That's all she said. And I said, "Yes, I understand." So when somebody says to me that Charon is a demon or demon-like or something like that, I would have to say no. I mean, more like an angel, if you want to call it an angel, but I don't even believe in angels. So, but it was certainly a spirit, certainly an undifferentiated spirit of cosmic consciousness that came to the aid of this soul that came out of the coma. And so that kind of answers the big question that you asked, which is, do you think it's a demon? No, I met the demon. I know what demons look like. They're psychic. I don't believe that they're anything but that. And they're in the realm of karma. They're not in the realm of nirvana. They can't exist in nirvana because none of this exists in nirvana. It's just not there. And all opposites have to go. You can't have a good and a bad in karma. Outside of karma, you can't. Once you go to nirvana, all opposites disappear. That's why when people come back from those experiences, like teachers in India, they can't talk about what happened on that other side because it doesn't relate to anything in this world. So that's the answer to, I think, the most important question that you asked. And I hope that answers it. I pray that it answers it. And
yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was.
And so that's the answer to that question.
That's so emotional and obviously touches everybody in so many ways with what goes on. It's one of the things that we kind of talk about, saying that words and paintings and sculptures just don't give justice to the way that some, well, when you experience things that are beyond our normal senses, which they consider just the five, it's so immense as a thing to do. I'd like Mike Ferrito to introduce himself to the people who probably don't know him here, and also, there you are, top corner. I can now see you in video mode. And also, if you want to mention that you will be talking on the 25th, you can do that as well.
Thank you, Paul, and hello, everyone. So just to mention, well, Paul just said I'll be doing a session like this on the 25th, but I met Myron, and I think all of you are, I'm sure, really awestruck by Myron. Myron and I are friends, and I met Myron, I think, through Anthony Peake, right, Myron? I'd read in The Hidden Universe about you, and I went out and looked at your artwork before I'd actually met you. I think I reached out to you, and then we had some Facebook meetings and talked, and we talk now a lot. And there's just no one like Myron. There's no art that is like Myron. It is just so unique, and putting out, if you're friends with Myron, you'll see putting out work all of the time, sculpture work, illustrations, paintings. And I keep a lot of Myron's work on my phone. I'll just take a snap of it and just look at it when I'm sitting somewhere idle or on the train. And I just feel we have such a great connection. I'm really grateful for Myron being in my life. Myron has written a few blurbs on some of the books I've written. I think we share. Myron, you have to give your approval on anything I get published, right? So, but as artists, we're artists of a kind. We need each other. We support each other. It's very important. And I think what Paul is doing here, creating this community, is incredibly valuable for all of us, because we're learning from each other. We have each other to talk to feed energy off of each other, to give energy to each other. So I'm really grateful. And, I ask Myron questions directly, so I won't ask Myron anything here, but just to say that I love the work you do. I love you, and I'm just glad to be in your world.
Yeah, I must say that when I read your books, I thought, okay, this guy is in the unconscious. This guy walks around inside his head and experiences the world from that perspective, and then brings out these wonderful words that create this kind of magical world that you can walk around in. It's you can transverse it really easy. Even though some of it's difficult, it's just a beautiful way of expressing reality. And that's what really hit me. You don't get very many metaphysical writers that write like you do. Mostly they write junk that isn't worth even reading. I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. The library's full of them. It's bookstores used to be being a workbook bookstore. But there are people who walk that walk inside their head, and whether they transpose that into language, music, art, or just plain life, that's enough. How much do you have to do? And if you can contribute what I have read, if you can keep contributing to that, then you're contributing to all of us. And all of the people that are here, they're all contributing to the greater self, the greater being of us all, especially in times like this that are so bad, so negative. And I swear to God, without companions, people that share a common destiny. We are herd animals after all. And it's really hard for people to be independent and alone. As a matter of fact, the world praises all of the independent people in movies and all of that, but in point of fact, they don't trust them. They like people who play the game. If you play the game, you're going to be loved, accepted, and the whole 9 yards. If you are outside the game and you're an individual, you're going to get nailed for being an individual. Even though all of the stories talk about how everybody praises individualism, the fact is that people don't like individuals. They don't trust them. They're different. They're strange. They're not part of the group. They're not in my clan. They're not Republicans or Democrats. They're not this. They're not that. So when you write the books that you write, which are physical, metaphysical, psychological, that tell these stories, right from the very beginning of human history, it's stories that have made consciousness. These stories that come from time immemorial that have made consciousness the way it is. And now we're telling ourselves really negative stories all the time, 24/7 on the internet, on the television. It's negative story, negative story, negative story, and occasionally you get something that's not negative. So I stay off those mediums. And then when I read books like yours that have a positive focus, I'm reassured. And when I listen to these people that have just talked, I'm reassured that I'm not alone. And I'm not the only one out here in this frontier of consciousness that has to walk this path by themselves. I really thought that most of my life, but I had to walk this path totally by myself. And Charon said, oh no, you're going to show your art. I never intended to show it to anyone, ever. As a matter of fact, I was going to take it to Burning Man and burn it all at this age. That was my goal. All 7,000 drawings that I have and all the 300 sculptures, I was going to take them all to Burning Man and burn them and send them back to the cosmic energy they came from. And Charon said, no, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to show these to the world. Man, I did not want to do that. I really didn't want to do that. That's like you opening your private diary to everybody in the world. And your books are like that. You're opening your private world to the world. And the world can be brutal. It can be really brutal. And all I can tell you is that ever since I've done that, I've never gotten a bad review. And I've shown all over the world to every kind of culture. And I've never gotten a bad review because they didn't know how to react by what they were looking at.
It takes a lot of courage to put your heart and soul. And I've had people read friends and say, "What was that? I didn't know that." I mean, some things are fiction, some are so kind of mingled together, like your work. And I just wanted to say finally, I liked what you said about, I heard, I think it was Jeffrey Kripal, I've read a number of books by him that I really like. And he said that samsara is nirvana.
Right.
That's kind of a profound thing. When we come to that realization. But anyhow, thank you, Myron, and thank you everyone for being here. It's great listening to you. I'll go back a little bit into the fold for the moment.
Okay, pal, have a good one. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, Myron. Bye all. I'm still here. I'm just gonna shut up for a bit.
I understand.
See ya.
That's okay.
All right.
You can never have to shut up. I have to say thank you very much for the kind words. It is the community, and just the idea seems to be rolling so well and speedy, and picking up with people that want to research and get together. And a phrase I'm going to overuse one day is going from a drop to an ocean, that we all stand together and learn more and just become one, which would be fantastic.
Yes.
I also like to say that Paranormal Blip, who has got his own podcast, and again, that's just one word, Paranormal and Blip, he's had to go, but he sent me a message that would be relevant to the rest of yourselves as well as Myron, because obviously you were talking. He says it's a fascinating discussion, and unfortunately, due to the fact he has to make it an early night for going to work tomorrow, but he says that Myron just is a really amazing person, along with his artwork, and also resonates with so many within the actual call that we've got going on now, which is really nice to hear from him. He's, again, I would recommend anyone going to listen to his podcast. And again, Mike, I'm getting confused now because you got Michael down as here on your Zoom, and I know you as Mike. So
Yeah.
you forgot to mention one of the big things that people should know about you, that your website is all one word, as in mikeferrito.com. And which book would you recommend them to read first?
Oh, thank you, Paul. So I think I think Falling from Trees would probably be a good starting book for this group. I do have other books that kind of deal with growing up in urban New York City and kind of the rough and tumble 70s. Like Myron talked about, they're very raw. There's a lot of fantastical stuff, but Falling from Trees is it's funny because it was like writing a note to myself in the future. That book has taken me on a journey to a discovery of things that I hadn't been as interested in before, like precognition, bilocation, telepathy. I just hadn't been, but I've had amazing renaissance of discovery from writing, and I'll talk about that on the 25th. I have some things coming out later. One is called Mescalito Riding His White Horse. Myron has read it. He read it and wrote a blurb for it. But Falling from Trees, and I'll put it in the window here. So thank you very much, Paul. That's very kind of you.
It's okay. And also, when we get back to it, I must get Eileen to give her website when she puts up her hand for a question. But the next person I'd like to introduce you to, all the way from Portugal, is Ricardo, who also gathers a lot of information for us.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
First of all, I want to thank to Paul from Perception Today for sending the link to this fantastic talk. I must confess, I was not aware of you, Myron, and I'm very grateful for how you spoke and how you let your emotions come up. So I think it's cathartic to every one of us. I took a few notes, and I won't take too long. I just want to say two things. I found it very interesting when you were asked to make that phone call, that were you not to ask and argue that the priest would not be there, even if it took just a second, it was the necessary time for the priest to be in the office. So he already knew that you were going to argue, and added the time. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I find it fascinating.
No, I think I agree. I think I agree with that.
I find it fascinating. The second thing, I have been trying to expose that from learning from people that have had health problems, comas. I realized that those people may be in their suffering might find a way to connect to the outside. Because what I try to argue about is that the brain does not need to be opened; it needs to be bypassed. Because our true selves is not in the brain, and the brain is not us in any way. The brain is there to regulate the body and to make the connection with our real self. So I call the body templates, and our real self to me is what you call Sharon, But although in your case, I suppose you, for your suffering and your trauma and the dealing with it, you made a fantastic thing. You might have connected an unattached entity that instead of incarnating decided to help another. So I find that possibility fascinating, because since you, as you told when you were sent on your quest, that she was not going with you, then it makes it two different people. So perhaps you have a non-incarnated entity helping you, your real self that is also outside of yourself. So I'm sorry if I'm being confused. That's all I wanted to say. And
No, that's
thank you
that's,
very much.
Thank you. That's not confusing. That's actually part of the mystery. I think that, you know, we have this huge desire to understand everything, to take it apart, to examine it, to figure it out. And I think that's wrong. I don't think you should be figuring it out. I think you should be experiencing it.
Exactly, because people try to confuse all the time knowledge with wisdom, and they are not the same, and are very different. You see, because when I come to these meetings, I'm listening to experiences, thus I'm listening to wisdom. Because knowledge has no part in it. Besides, we gather those experiences and build on the knowledge. To feel, to experience that it's all wisdom. It's not part of knowledge. It's everything is experience. So sharing them it makes people believe in themselves and seeing that perhaps their experiences are also part of their reality and they must accept them. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I absolutely agree. You know, the problem is that people are, at a very early age, children are talked out of their experiences. Oh, you know, that's just the kid. That you're just a kid. You're just a kid. And then you get a little older, and then you're going, hey, I thought you outgrew that. You know, on and on and on. However, if you are part of a religious tradition like Christianity or something, and you say that, you know, Jesus spoke to me, then that's approved, because that's part of the, you know, the extroverted way of dealing with spirituality rather than the inward path. And I think that it's a very easy path to take. The external one is a very easy path to take. The internal one has a lot of difficulties with it, and it has a lot of costs with it that most people don't want to pay. They just don't want to, you know, they got other things to do, you know, and I'm not telling anyone that they should do what I did or how I did it or anything else. It's none of my concern, really. My concern is to experience what Charon wants me to experience, give back to the universe what I can in the form of music, art, or whatever. Help other people who are on that path if they want help, and let them go and be who they are. You know, let them discover themselves, rather than having a book tell them, this is what you are. You are this. I remember at one point, I heard that when you're in Hinduism and you're reading the Upanishads and your experience goes against what the Upanishads say, the Sufis say you go with your experience. In Christianity, if you have an experience that goes against Christianity, the Christian ministers say you go with the Bible. So your own personal discovery is negated. And I just think that's wrong. I think that you should be able to walk whatever path that takes you to bliss, whatever that path is. And I think it varies from individual to individual. I don't think it's a collective thing. I think it's an individual thing. And
yes, but it comes from the system. It comes from culture. You see, if you are into the desire to rule, and you discover that everyone is a mage, you have to find a way to reduce their spirituality into a level that may be controlled. So you create religion and At least that's how I see it. It's a reduction of spirituality.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, I left the church and I left all that behind because I had to go find. There's an old expression, I've been looking for myself, and I have gathered myself from everywhere. And that's what I've done. I've gone looking for myself with Caron's help, and I have gathered myself from every experience that I could possibly enter into and accept. And sometimes my ego wouldn't accept it, so it took me years to get through certain kinds of things that I just couldn't accept. And then finally, there was a breakthrough. And it seems like a long thing, but it's actually a short thing, because time is, we think of time as linear, but it's not always linear. And of course, I do a lot of out-of-body stuff, and I go to another planet called Zelkon, which is in Orion's belt. But that's a whole different subject. But the point of it is that you're right. I think that if you realize that all of the dogma and doctrine is an anathema to your own personal spiritual experience, unless you can use those phrases to help you move into an awareness that is unique to you and unique to the universe, that then it has positive repercussions. I remember Thomas Merton, a Catholic priest. He went to a Buddhist temple and spent years there meditating. And he got permission from Rome, because he was a very famous writer, to go, and a Jesuit, to go to this Japanese monastery and meditate with these Japanese. And he's a Roman Catholic Jesuit. So he goes there, he spends years meditating, then he wrote a book about it, by the way. And then he came back to Rome and he said, okay, I wrote this book about this meditation stuff. And the Roman government, or what do you want to call it, the Roman priests, said, hey, would you please not publish this until after your death? And since he was a Jesuit, he agreed to do that. And in that book, he explains that while he was meditating, all of those things that he experienced as a Jesuit priest just disappeared. They were gone. So, and what was left was eternal consciousness. And he said, I can't say with authority that I was out of touch with reality. And so this is a very deep individual guy on a very, very special quest. And I think he found what almost anybody who goes on a personal quest finds, but most of this other stuff is all just dogma and talk and control and all the rest of it. And then you have the eternal, which is in you. It is you. You're not separate from it. You are it. And since you are it, you walk it every single day of your life. No matter who you are, you walk it. Now you can deny that it exists, and you can behave with your ego or do whatever you want. That's up to you. You have a free will. But the point of it is, it's always there, and it'll always be there, and it has always been there. And that's what Thomas Merton experienced in his meditations, that he hadn't experienced as a Roman Catholic, which is kind of an interesting side story. So that's my answer to what you were saying.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's excellent. And it comes at the right time as Miro has his hand up. Miro comes to the table a lot of times to our conversations and brings great insight.
Hello?
Maybe he's just finding his mute button at the moment.
Oh,
Are you still there, Miro?
He's muted. He's got to unmute
Right.
himself.
Yeah, I know. You are there.
There he is.
There you are.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Hi, Merrill.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I was just looking for a mute button. So good afternoon.
Good
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. I just want to add something regarding religions. Yeah, I did a little bit. I cannot say that I know everything, but I know just a little bit, just touching. And I find that almost each religion that I can across is sending same message. That find who you are. That's the message of each religion. Even Christianity. I will come back to that. And as Dr. Giordani from New York University, he said that there is a message of religion, and the priests they design how to worship, and they get corrupted at the time. So another messenger came and tried to reestablish everything properly. These things go around. How I understand it. And as per Christianity, how I understand, because Christianity came to Western country through Rome. That's how I understand it. Rome had already power or quite big of part of the world. And so, and they're losing in the beginning of these times. So they need to get of power, and there was two competing religions, Mithraism and Christianity won, and they established their way and dualistic way. How is presented Christianity through church? It is dualistic way. I was raised as a Christian, so I was wondering, I still love Jesus. So if he was preaching truth, he has to teach non-duality. And so I was looking a little bit around that, and I get across Gospel of Thomas. And I would suggest, to read it. Because in Gospel of Thomas is actual teaching of Jesus. Because what the church is teaching about the Jesus. I don't have anything problem with that. It is duality, and you can still achieve the goal through love. Because how I understand, suffering is caused by ignorance. Ignorance can be removed by knowledge or by love, and I think by both. Because I'm not so smart, so I have to use both things, knowledge and love. And you can find teaching of Jesus I find teaching of Jesus in Gospel of Thomas, and one of my favorite saying is saying 22. So if you will read, sometimes maybe we can just discuss over saying 22. That's everything I want to say.
Well, I must tell you that the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel according to Mary Magdalene, all the Dead Sea Scroll documents, which are mostly Gnostic and wonderful. I just love them. No wonder the founding fathers didn't want it in the Bible. I mean, it scared the hell out of them. That's a little pun there.
And so, sorry, I just jump in. Some saying I still don't understand, so I don't think that they were able to understand. I think even Jesus' apostles didn't understand everything what he was teaching, because non-duality is not so easy to understand, or, in that environment, it was maybe not so easy to understand, but Thomas did understand it. Maybe some other ones, but, he understood it. He put it nicely in his gospel.
I remember people used to ask me, are you a Christian? And I said, yeah, I had breakfast with him just the other day. And they looked at me like, what? And I didn't say that just to be glib. I said it because I actually did have breakfast with Jesus many, many times on the mountain. Now, of course, that's a projection of my unconscious, I believe. But I talked to him. We talked. We had good times. We had good times, And there's a song, I walked with him, I talked with him, and he told me that I'm his own, and the joy we shared, I tarry there, none other had ever known. And so I don't have a problem with the Christ, or Jesus, the Jesus of Nazareth, that if he was actually from Nazareth, which I doubt. But I don't have a problem with that idea, because that to me is eternal love and eternal consciousness. So that's what, if you read those other books, the Sea Scrolls books, you find that right there, because that's what the Gnostics believed. And one really interesting thing happened to me. A friend of mine liked this spiritual teacher, Baba Muktananda from India. And she wanted me to go to his meeting because he came to California to do some meetings. Now, I didn't speak English, but he had a translator. And so I really didn't want to go because, I didn't really believe at the time in that dimension and in that teaching. But I went. And the women sat on one side, the men sat on the other. And Baba taught. And he taught, and he said some really wonderful things, but it really didn't touch me very much. So I went back to her place and she said, wow, wasn't he great? Wasn't he just great? I mean, it was amazing, just amazing, all the things he said. And so I sort of agreed with her, but he didn't really touch me. I didn't get anything from his teaching. So, okay, fast forward about a month or two, and I'm on the mountain minding my business, meditating, and here comes Baba out of a blue light. And he stayed with me for about 6 months and taught me what he needed to say. We talked. For 6 months he came. And then one day he said, my time with you is now over and I must go. And you have all that you need. You have all the tools that you will ever need. Just follow those tools, follow the blue light, and it will take you home. And he disappeared. So I get home, I get a phone call from this lady who brought me to the original group. She said, Baba has passed away in India. And if you did the time flip, it's almost an exact time where I saw him on the mountain and he said goodbye. So you can take that for whatever you want. You can say, well, that's just psychodabble, or you can say, all I can tell you is I learned so much from Baba Muktananda. In fact, if you start calling him Baba. And I was never a Hindu. I mean, I didn't think of myself as a Hindu, but it didn't seem to make any difference. All those labels, all of that stuff just disappeared. It was all pure bliss, love, and relationship. It was just an amazing contradiction to the control that I went through in the church and the exorcisms. But anyway, that's my story about the East. And when I started studying Hinduism almost immediately. But then I found that it was the same as the Bible. So I had to put it down. I had to go my own way. So I did.
Right. I've got some messages which have come in, and I'm just trying to spot if Eileen is still in the room because she had a hand up and I was going to go back to her. But meanwhile, I have got a couple of messages. Unfortunately, Ian Hawkins had to leave and said, sorry, but I got to go. And thank you, Myron, and everyone.
Yeah, I saw that on the screen.
Okay, that's good. And also another message from Shadow Fox, which I think it'd be worthwhile coming from yourself, the message that you gave to me.
Okay, hi. Yeah, when I was listening and you guys were kind of discussing, Christianity, religion, so on and so forth. And this really comes down to where it's perceptions and synchronicity. I have a Native American background and upbringing and so on and so forth. And there's a saying, or it's sometimes told within a story, but it pretty much resonates this way. And it says that many go into buildings to talk to God. We go into nature and Creator speaks to us.
Right.
So just let that resonate and see where that sets a little bit. because Myron was talking about dogmas and so on and so forth. And I say this, and I've been saying it quite a bit because I think it should be said, that there is a major difference in qualifying the difference between religion and spirituality. They're two separate things.
Absolutely.
Religion follows really a business structure, and spirituality is that of expansion, period. It's of self-discovery. It's having your own personal relationship. There's much, much more to it, but the way, I guess, one way could really be stated is that, like the Pope, for instance, he's religious. He follows a certain set of guidelines and teaches his flock from that. The Dalai Lama, on the other case, is that of wisdom. And so it really just depends when we come down to seeing where our beliefs are and how are they resonating, how are they serving us. And it's like and I know, Myron, you really kind of know what many of us speak about when you're brought up in that. I was raised Roman Catholic, and I was supposed to take my confirmation, and I turned around and looked at my mother, and one day I just says, no, I can't do it. Yeah. I had this impulse, this feeling, I cannot do it. And she says, well, you have to come to church with me. And I says, no, I don't. This is my church. And we were outside. And yes. From that moment in time, and she just kind of looked at me, and she knew it was in my eyes. So again, it's just that part of us. And I'll bring it right back to my native teachings. We go into nature, that alone time. So I just had to put that in there and add that little 2 cents in there. And Paul, thank you for this. Thank you, really.
I think that's really important, what you just said. I think that's really important. I think that connection with nature is essential. I was on staff of a big church here in where I live, and Karen told me, you're going to have to go. Now, I had to walk away from my living. I was married at the time, and I went into the pastor and I said, I'm going to have to resign. And he said, what? And I said, yeah, I was on the music committee. And because it was a big church, we had a huge choir, orchestra, the whole 9 yards. And I worked with the string sections. And I went to him and I just said, I can't do this anymore, Jack. That was the pastor. I can't do this anymore. It's not valid. I'm a hypocrite. I have to go. I have to follow my path. And he said, well, what path is that? And I said, I'll quote a scripture for you and then I'll read. Here's the scripture. It's in Corinthians. When I was a child, I thought as a child, I understood as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. And I walked out because that was the only thing I could say to him. And I think that sometimes you have to follow your bliss, and it can hurt people. I know it hurt my wife at the time, and because she was all connected with everybody in the church and all that kind of stuff. But what is more important, my immortal being or being part of a church that I don't believe in? I was a hypocrite teaching people the gospels that I didn't believe in. And I had to go in order to move on, to move on in my own process. I had to let some things go, and I still have to let things go. So I just continue my journey.
Yeah, and I just think that there comes a point in pretty much what everyone is saying here and within this community. We're kind of like that, like a bridger of worlds. And the one thing that both you and I can do for the most part is we can still talk the language. And because we've studied it, we understand it. And it, as an adult, I went back to Christianity for a little while. I just looked at it with a different lens. That's all. I never looked at it, like I said, nature taught me everything. And so I went back and I looked at it in a metaphysical, spiritual way, not a religious way. And so, yeah, it's those bridger of worlds is really in essence of what we're doing. It doesn't matter, how things are coming. It's like we're trying to give the message, and it will fall.
To help our research and understanding, leave Perceptions Today's podcast reviews, subscribe to the podcast, along with the other social media accounts, and share. Come and join our live events. That way we can get together and have thoughtful discussions along with advancing our understanding of concepts as we go along.